if your value as a person is based upon always having to be the one to deliver and being the center of attention, you'll see that as a failure because I wasn't needed.
Welcome to the InitiativeOne Leadership Podcast, where we help leaders maximize their impact and transform their lives. I'm your host, Nick Nighbor, as well as the VP of Strategic Partnerships for InitiativeOne. In today's episode, we have CEO and founder of InitiativeOne, Dr. Fred Johnson. And in this week's episode, we have the Q&A episode where you can send us questions and we'll roast, ask questions.
Let's go.
Ask questions of Dr. Fred. This is our way of giving back to the community. We help leaders and organizations build healthy cultures, remove drama, and create authenticity in organizations. And Dr. Fred is the man behind it. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. Question one, are you ready?
I'll be eager to see what the questions are.
All right. So this first question is from Will Robinson. What are some ways to bridge the gap between the successful individual contributor to a successful, deliberate leader?
Okay, let me just speak off my head. First of all, leadership has changed in that for many decades, the leader was defined as the one person on the team who had the most knowledge, had the most experience, probably did the job better than everybody else. And leadership was all about really the leader, and then everyone else on the team were basically the gophers that were assigned to do the task that the bigwig wanted them to do. That's changed. Leadership today is no longer about oneself being the individual contributor. Leadership today is about the team. How do I build the team? How do I empower the team? How do I leverage myself through the team? The reason for that is for a long time our country operated by a unwritten contract that you could either have speed or you could have quality, but you can't have both. Well, technology, what it does is people are exposed to technology. One of the byproducts of that is once they're exposed to an idea, their expectations go up. And so we live in a world today that for the first time, people don't want to choose between two, they want both. So it's speed and quality. Well, that's a major leap. So in order to make that kind of leap, your team has to maximize its brain power. And so rather than the old question was, when are you going to get that done? The new question is, what do you think about this? What are your ideas on this? And that is the first leap, the first gap, how to bridge that gap is the leader moving from the teller to the leader moving as the teacher. And the best way to teach is to ask questions. What do you think about this? I need your ideas. So one way to bridge the gap is to understand mentally that you have a responsibility to transfer your knowledge. Every time that you do something as a leader, you either have to have someone with you to watch that, or you're meeting regularly with your team explaining the whys of why you just did what you did. So you're constantly teaching, you're constantly mentoring, you're constantly asking the team for their input. And another way is that you put your team on the front lines. You ask team members to do things that normally you would have done, and you're very good at it, but they can't learn unless they're doing it. Mm-hmm. So that individual leader has to let go of perfectionism, understand that when you start scaling up your team has to start making decisions and doing things that you would have normally done. Well, when you hand that over, there's a learning curve. And you have to allow them to make mistakes. And when they do, you go into teaching. What did we learn from this? How can we become even more proficient in this the next time? So you're constantly teaching, you're constantly asking questions, you're constantly putting your teammates in positions where they're asked to stretch. Just like it's stretching for you to put them in that position when you know that you can do it better than anybody on the team at that point. But here's another way to look at it. One leader who is at 100% still can only create 100%. 4 leaders at 80% can create 320%.
Good point.
So what would you rather have?
Right, you'd want the higher. And that's a big shift too.
Yes.
From just, all right, this is my little corner, this is where I live, to actually helping instead of like, what is the saying, teach a man to fish?
Yes.
Right? What is the saying? How's that work?
I don't know. I'm not a fish guy.
You're not a fish guy. The idea is like, I can fish for myself, or I can teach some other people to fish and they can fish too. How much more fish are we going to catch?
And in the short term, you'll catch fish faster, but you'll be the only one catching fish.
Correct.
And you have to repeat it every time. So to move from individual talented leader to the bridge of building a team, I want to put the emphasis on leader. You're not a leader today if you can't build your team. You may be talented individually, but you're not a leader today if you are not building up your team, building up their confidence, helping them to win, so that eventually you get to the point that if you're not in the room, it's seamless, that they won't even know that you're not in the room, may not care because someone else is doing the job equally better. I got a call yesterday from a CEO in Tennessee. And 3 years ago when their company contacted us, he said, Fred, we're not going to do this process and this engagement unless you do it. And I knew at that time I couldn't fulfill that commitment based on other commitments I had made. And I said, look, I called him by name and I said, you're going to have to trust us on this. We've got people that in place that can do this. If they couldn't do it well, we wouldn't have them in this place. Well, he called me yesterday and I said, do you need me to come down? It was in a southern state, and spend a day with your people. He said, no, Dr. Paul, which is one of our teammates, he's got it down. We don't need you to come down and shake up the team. Paul's got it under control. Well, I immediately went, yes, that's a sign of success today. Mm-hmm. If your value as a person is based upon always having to be the one to deliver and being the center of attention, you'll see that as a failure because I wasn't needed. Someone said to me today after the think tank, I'm afraid of becoming so good at teaching my people how to do these things that it's going to work myself out of a job. And I said, people who are good at transferring knowledge and building a team will never work themselves out of an opportunity. There will always be opportunities for that.
Yes. Thank you for that answer. That was really, really good.
Good.
And you've experienced this, starting this company to now having a team of people that you can trust.
And listen, the biggest obstacle in making that gap is really not the other people. The biggest obstacle is overcoming yourself. I had to overcome my perfectionism. I had to overcome that my identity was always being out front. Had to overcome my identity that I was needed to be the crisis solving person. So the real bridge starts with you taking a look at you and asking yourself, what are things that are going on in your personal narratives that are keeping you from this handoff?
Yes. Perfect. Ready for the next question?
I am.
All right. This is really, really good because there's a lot of noise that we're all dealing with every day. So this question comes from Peter. How do we, as leaders, adapt and adjust to all the challenges we have in today's society? Example, culture, short-staffed, pay me more, I want to do less. How do leaders adapt and adjust to those challenges?
Well, I can only speak to how we've adapted. We've adapted in that the more noise there is out there, the more deliberate time you need to be spending with your team, giving them very clear expectations of what we need. Quit paying attention to the noise. This is what we need from you. This is what it looks like to be a contributing teammate. So one is you're constantly communicating with your team. Number two, you know who you are as an organization, and you're not going to compromise that. It doesn't matter what other people's noise are. We know our purpose. So lifting up the purpose of your organization before your people over and over is critical. What you're doing? Is it within our purpose? Is it within our values? Is it within our critical goals? So the answer to noise is clarity of direction. And so we're constantly lifting up. Our trust accelerators is what we need from each other and how we behave with each other. Our critical goals, which are in light of all kinds of people wanting things from us, the noise. What are the 2 or 3 things that we have to always make sure that we're not neglecting if we're going to maximize ourselves as an organization and meeting people's needs? So, and then what are our values? Is what we're being asked to do a violation of any of our values? And then is this on purpose for us? If we're saying no to any of those, the answer is what we're being asked to do is noise. So that decision frame that we teach organizations how to build is the answer to not being taken down by the noise.
And if you're on purpose, and it doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter, it could be education, manufacturing, it doesn't matter what industry, each company wants to make an impact on the marketplace that they're serving. And if they have a purpose, they can have that impact. If you forget what it is.
Well, you either live by your purpose or you live by everybody else's noise. And so, again, the answer to overcoming noise is to have a daunting clarity about why we're here, what is our purpose, and what impact do we need to have. And that becomes, you want to, most of the time, noise screams like thunder, and purpose, values, and critical goals whisper. You want to make sure that you're talking so much about this, and it's so much front of mind, that is the thunder, and that the noise has become the whisper.
The whisper. I love that.
It takes time and a lot of work to do that.
And it has to be repeated over and over again.
The average person doesn't even begin to get something unless they've heard it 8 to 12 times. Mm-hmm. So we're constantly, we ask that question here all the time. How does that fit our purpose? How does that fit our values? How does this fit our critical goals? If it's not, we need to have a really good discussion of why we shouldn't move forward or should move forward. And so we're very intentional. Intentionality is the opposite of reacting to the noise.
Correct. Are you satisfied with the current levels of accountability in your organization? Join us next month for our next leadership event where we're discussing how you can energize your team through consensus-driven leadership. This event is our gift back to the community. Join us in person or online by registering at InitiativeOne.com. Next question. Emily asks, can introverts be in a leading role?
Actually, introverts have a leg up over extroverts. I used to think that a leader had to be charismatic and could walk in a room and set the tone for the room by his or her magnetic personality. And that's simply not true. Introvert and extrovert is really not about your personality style, it's where you draw your energy from. Extroverts draw their energy from being in a room with other people. Introverts draw their energy from being in a room by themselves. You put me in a room by myself and I can't wait to get out of that room after 15 minutes. An introvert, you put them in a room by themselves for 3 hours, when they come out, they're bouncing off the walls.
They'll grab a book and read for 8 hours and not want to be in.
And so the strength of an introvert is they bring tremendous focus. They have a natural ability to focus, and when you have focus, you're able to maximize your impact. And so absolutely introverts, I would say it this way, can extroverts be as strong of a leader as an introvert? And they both bring something powerful to the table. The most important question is, are you being yourself? Are you being who you are and not trying to be what someone else wants you to be? You can be an introvert trying to be an extrovert, or an extrovert that thinks that they need to be an introvert. That creates tremendous inner stress and inner conflict. Mm-hmm. And when higher the stress goes, the lower your performance goes. So the wider answer to the question is, whatever style am I in, have I accepted that and have I embraced that fully? Because each one have their own strengths.
Correct. Which goes back to the first question. It used to be the leader was all the magic, but everyone else has something to contribute, and that goes hand in hand with the introvert that thinks that they can't contribute. No, they can contribute a great deal. It's going to come through a different lens.
That's right.
As an extrovert.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Perfect. All right, last question. This is from Lacey.
Okay.
Lacey asks, when you fall down to the 2.7 hole, how can you catch yourself before hitting the bottom?
Well, first of all, we all have that 2.7. We never, ever get to the point that we don't have 2.7 moments. You just want to make sure it doesn't become a 2.7 month. And the way that we move out from 2.7, we got to 2.7 by listening to the messages of other people in our lives telling us we were just a 2.7. And we were repetitive with that. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. So it took you talking yourself into believing you were 2.7. Well, the way out of 2.7 is exactly the same way. It takes as much effort to convince yourself that you're a 2.7 as it does to convince yourself that you're an 8. Mm-hmm. And so it ultimately starts with knowing what you look like when you're in 2.7. Your friends know what you look like when you're in your 2.7 mode. We call that your little guy mode.
Yes.
They know what you look like. So one, do you have accountability around you that when you're in your 2.7 moment, do your friends, are they able to say, hey, Fred, time out. what's going on, because I know when you're in your 2.7, what's triggering this. So one is accountability. Second is self-awareness, being aware of when you're in that moment. And then the third is making a choice to believe the truth about yourself. I choose to accept the fact that I am of infinite worth and that no one can ever take my value away. That is a choice. We call that living by declaration, not living by desperation, which is my value is defined by others, and I am desperate to prove myself to them all the time. So we all have those moments. And I tell people that if you're no longer struggling with that, you probably have already given into that monster. As long as you're struggling with that question and there's a tension there, I would say you're probably pretty okay with that. And it's just an ongoing tension that you're going to have to fight for the rest of your life. You want to make sure that you're managing it and it's not managing you.
Correct. So would you say it truly starts with awareness, like I'm in a 2.7, this is how I'm feeling right now? Just being aware, would you say that's where it starts?
And what do I look like? How do I behave when I'm at 2.7? How do I treat other people? What are my patterns of behavior when I'm in that 2.7? And your people around you who know you well, they don't know it in that language, but they know what your 2.7s are. Mm-hmm. And you have to give them permission that when you see this in me, would you let me know? Because often we're the last ones to see it. So sometimes it requires a community to help us get out of our 2.7.
Yes. And a level of emotional intelligence to admit I'm not in my best place right now.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. And being at 2.7 doesn't mean we're bad. It just means we're not effective. You know, people try to put labels on that. My adult self is my good side. My little guy is my bad side. No, I said, your little guy took care of you throughout your childhood. Your little guy is not bad. Your little guy is just ineffective. And your world has outgrown the ability of the little guy. And the little guy is trying to protect you from hurt by saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, and try to get you to play it safe. Well, ironically, playing it safe is the very opposite of what the little guy wants you to do, in that they don't want you to be hurt. And one of the best ways to get hurt, ironically, is to play it safe. Instead of leaning in and trusting your gut and trusting your abilities and trusting your experience and going for it.
That's really interesting on how you labeled the 2.7. You said it's not a mistake, it's not a failure, it's simply ineffective.
It's just ineffective. You know, we all have behaviors that we learned when we were kids in order to create emotional safety in environments that we felt threatened, especially with other adults. Well, no one told us and as we grow into adulthood, those things that we use to keep us safe in adulthood actually make other people feel unsafe. And so when they're feeling unsafe, your team's going to shut down. I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, my father would tease me a lot because I would constantly be teasing my brothers. And Dad said, hey, if you're going to dish it out, you got to take it. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't handle criticism, so I would literally go, well, I'm not talking. And when he would tease me, I would go into a corner, and I could stand in a corner for 3 hours at a time because that was a safe place for me. It was punishment for most people. For me, it was a place of safety. Well, move forward 30 years, and I'm leading a major team, and my team is telling new teammates that are coming onto my team, I had no idea that these conversations were happening, that whatever you do with Fred, don't ever criticize him because he'll shut down on you and he'll go away. And you're outside of his inner circle and you're on the outside. You just need to know that. What they were saying is, Fred will tell you he's not talking, and he will go away from you and he will get into his corner and you're isolated. And that shut my team down. It worked for me as a kid, but now as an adult, that same I not talking behavior caused my entire team to feel unsafe and that they couldn't be genuine and real with me.
Oh.
And that's an example of how there comes a point when that behavior crosses from being effective to ineffective.
Correct.
And a healthy team will help you realize what that is and when you cross that line.
Right. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Those are some really great answers, and different in how I would, for good reason, as I was going through these, like, this is really good. So the information that you shared today was definitely enlightening to me. And the listener, the watcher right now, whether you're on YouTube or you're listening to this on the podcast, hope you found some great value in this. This is our question and answer episode. So if you have other questions that you want to ask either Dr. Fred or the InitiativeOne team, send us an email. And that email is info@InitiativeOne.com. Any questions that you have, go ahead and email us those questions, and we'll try to address them the best way that we can. Thank you so much for plugging in and listening to this episode. If you love this episode, leave us a rating, leave us a review. If you've not yet subscribed or follow our podcast, make sure you follow it so you don't miss any future episodes. Every month we put on an event called the InitiativeOne Think Tank. It's a leadership event, and really what it is, it's a discussion and where we cover topics that are happening in today's world, and we have a discussion on those topics and share our thoughts and just the principles and the different models that we teach here at InitiativeOne to help you, the leader, whether you're a CEO of a company or a laborer at a manufacturing facility, it doesn't matter. We all have influence with each other. So if you have not yet done that, go to InitiativeOne.com and make sure that you register for the next event. And remember, leadership isn't what you do, it's who you are. Thanks for listening.